Okay, everyone, welcome. We are on week 7, day 3, I believe. I'm losing track of the days. Um, we have the stream up and running, so we should be good there. Tonight we have a special presenter who is going to talk a little bit about job and interviewing. I got the chance to review the slides, and I'm super excited. So this is Shaun. You're welcome to come up, and I will get your slides up here, and you should be good to go.
Sweet. Hello, everyone. My name is Shaun. I'm here to talk to you about the technical aspects of interviewing, including resumes and stuff like that. Um, I solve problems by telling computers what to do. It's kind of my job. Hopefully, you guys will be doing that soon. You can find me on my website, GitHub, LinkedIn, etc. You don't care about me. That's not important. Um, what? If I can get you a job, that's even more important. I broke it up into a couple different places. We're going to start right from the resume, which is essentially you in PDF form. Um, the biggest thing about resumes that I think, and I was taught when I went to school and everything else, is they're always like, "Oh, make a nice resume, make it so it impresses someone." But the reality is nowadays, when you apply for a job, computers look at your resume before anything else. Really fancy resumes don't make it through the algorithms a lot of times. I've seen a lot of really nice looking resumes that you couldn't pick up who the name was, where they live. I will admit, I put my resume through one to test it while I was doing this, and it thought I lived in Spain for some reason. So I had to fix that. But that's the problem. If you have an algorithm that looks at your resume and it thinks you live in Spain, you could get disqualified for a job because it's a US only job. And it might say that where you live, but just this random algorithm and the random setup that you have in your resume could end up putting you somewhere else. So, what I'm going to suggest is that you definitely focus on content. Um, the resume could just be a simple resume with just basic information like your name, where you live, what job you're at, what information you know, what you want them to know. But it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be special. I mean, I think there's a time and a place for that, but especially when you initially interview, have a nice, basic, simple resume. Nowadays, especially in the tech environment, your resume isn't going to impress you, anyone. It's I've looked at a ton of resumes and I can't remember a single person that I hired because they had a nice resume. So don't waste your time. I mean, there's so many other better things to do. A nice resume is kind of impressive, but nobody's going to remember it. Um, the best advice I got was I actually went through some career counseling things and things like that, is to have two resumes. One of them to have that, put a little bit of a personal touch on it, so where you're actually standing in front of them, you hand it to them, you say, "Oh, that's a really nice resume," and then you can go over it with them. But have a plain, basic resume that you can feed through an algorithm that'll just figure out where you live, what you've courses you've taken, what job you're at, what experience you have, and kind of it can just put it into a database that will run through various filters. Because the reality is, for any job that you post, there might be 200, 300 people that apply for it, and nobody's going to sit through and read them all. So they use computers, they use algorithms to try and figure out which ones I should actually look at to save myself some time. And I know for a fact that I've had to dig through and a lot of them let you upload and apply for it, and they put some of them in a wastebasket or are automatically rejected. I've had to dig through them to find certain people because they got rejected for various reasons. So just don't put a ton of effort into your resume. Just make sure that it can be read by computers, because that's going to be your first blocker. There's tons of apply for tons of jobs and you won't get anything back, and it might be that you just got auto blocked for some reason. You just don't know. So spend some time on a nice personal resume if you want. It's something you can actually explain to them and you know what a person is looking at. But make sure you have a resume that can get through all the different filters and different systems out there. Um, the biggest thing for me when I'm interviewing people is not so much the resume, but all the links and stuff that they have in it. Have a website, especially if you're doing web development or something like that. Don't be the person that doesn't exist on Google. That's probably not a good idea. Sometimes that's even more suspect than having a bad resume. Having a simple website, get your own domain, get something that looks professional. Just work on your online professional appearance. Because every single person that I've resumed, I've also Googled. So make sure Google yourself, do it often, set up a feed, do anything you can do to make sure that your presence and what you want people to see is what you want them to see. Don't let other things, get in there. So having a simple website with your own domain is almost standard nowadays. It's something I look for. It's something that's fairly impressive, right? If you have a basic website, it doesn't need to be fancy. Don't have a website with like loading and flash and all that stuff. Just have a basic website with your stuff on it, maybe a picture of you and your kids or your dog or whatever else. That's fine too. But just have a basic, simple website. The biggest one, and I will tell you this will help you out a lot, is have a GitHub or a GitLab or a Bitbucket account with code in it. The code from this stuff would be great. Have all that stuff in there publicly so they can see it. I will honestly skip certain parts of a interview process if I can see that you've written code recently that is something that I'm interested in. It might get you ahead. It might get you to skip certain parts. Interviewing is hard. It takes forever. Everybody wants to skip certain parts. So if you have code out there that you can show that is recent, oh man, that's nice. I always get excited when I see stuff like that. And the last part for this little bit is to have a professional email. You'd be surprised. I mean, if your email address is me and my three cats 87 at yahoo.com, I'm gonna judge a little. It, I can't help it. I try not to, but I mean, I even put a little joke in here. I mean, don't have an AOL.com one. It doesn't look good. Don't have a .r.com or Earthlink. If you get your own domain, it's going to come with email usually or somewhat cheap email, so you can be like you at yourname.com. Yeah. Yeah, it's 10, $12 a year. It's really cheap and it looks way better. I mean, Gmail's okay, having special purpose email, especially if you're going for like a security, if you get Proton email or something like that. There's certain email addresses that would look better, but they're so specific it's not worth it. Just have your own domain, have a U at or something like that. No, Proton Mail is okay. I mean, if you're going for security, that's something. So if you know that there's an email service out there that's specific to a certain point that you're trying to get to, you can use that as well. But most jobs don't care. Just have something nice. Um, so you've got all that out, figured out. You've got your resume taken care of. You're feeling pretty good about that. You got your online persona fairly okay. I mean, one thing to note before you get to this point, clear up any public social media stuff. Especially if you Google yourself and you notice that shows up because that means I can see it too. And I have actually not hired people because they had Twitter drama or they had a blog where they complained about their previous employer. So clean that stuff up too. Just make sure it looks nice. Don't make me have to be like, what's going on here? Just make me look at you professionally and just see you as a professional person and be okay with that. Um, so when you go to apply for that, it's basically just how well can you fill out an online form. You upload your resume, it tries to figure stuff out, and it asks you to fill in blanks that it can't figure out. Um, when you're applying for a job, it's important for you to know what you want. There's going to be certain things that you need to have at the top of your list that are deal breakers that you can't expect the company to change. Things like location, things like work hours. I mean, if you got kids and you need specific work hours, that's kind of a deal breaker. Things like a location. If you apply for a job in California and you expect a 10-minute commute, they're probably not going to have an office within 10 minutes of your house around here. So have that list of like flat out deal breakers that won't be able to do anything about, that companies won't be able to do about, so you can skip some of those things. But everything else, apply for it. Seriously, seriously apply for it. Don't look at the recommendations or requirements. Don't look at college. Don't look at any of that stuff. Apply for it. I've hired people where I said I need a comp sci degree, but they didn't have it because it doesn't matter. You just always put comp sci degree. You always list out all the things they need to know and just tons of stuff. And it's just essentially just a list of what we do. You don't need to hit all of those. And I think a lot of people hesitate because they're like, oh, I don't know how to use Jenkins or I don't know how to use Jira, so I'm not going to apply for it. Please apply for it because that's probably not a big deal for them. They're willing to teach you that stuff. So when in doubt, always apply for the job. Make them tell you that they're not interested. Don't disqualify yourself. Don't do their job for them because they have automated systems to go through some of it anyway. Make me do my job. Make me go through and say, yep, you know what? I think I've got enough good qualified people that I can take a chance on this person or I can do something else. Give yourself a chance and give the company that's trying to hire people a chance to hire you. Um, and like I said, seriously, just ignore those requirements. One of the things I hate is that we list it out as requirements, but when I've written job recs before, it's all it is just listing out everything that I've used. I'm never going to find someone that's used every single thing that we've used at a job. If obviously there's certain things like if you don't know that programming language, maybe don't apply unless it's a junior position and they're willing to teach you. But I mean, if they list out a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of databases that you don't know how to use, but you're applying for a UI position, if you're doing a UI position, you're not even going to talk to the database, so it doesn't matter. But they just list out all the stuff that they use, trying to like, I don't know if they're trying to scare you or if it's just an old habit. They just list it all out. And I mean, honestly, if you hit one or two, just apply anyway. Seriously, it's don't do their job for them. You know, apply for it. You never know. I've some great people that I've hired, some great people that I've interviewed didn't match up at all. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's so many other things that can make a difference. Um, the biggest thing and the thing that I really want to impress because it hurt me a little bit too is that it takes time. It takes a lot of time, especially in a tech field like this. There are I went back and looked at my last job search because I kept track of it. It took me 5 months to find a job, and just be prepared for that because it's interviewing takes a long time. I applied for I think 20 jobs, something like that. I got a call back from maybe half of them. I got like the first interview from about five of them, got into like the technical interview. I got two of the secondary interviews. I actually looked back at it, the place I work at now, Swim Lane. It took me 39 days, four interviews, a live coding session, and a take home to get that job. So just be prepared for that stuff. Just be prepared that it's going to be an emotional roller coaster because I mean that whole 5 months, I like probably month two or month three into that, I'm like, man, I should just pick up a broom. I'm terrible. Nobody wants me. I don't know what I'm doing. What was I even doing in my last job? They must have been, it must have been a charity case, all this stuff. But it's just, I mean, for every job that's out there, especially online jobs, it's so easy to apply that there's 200, 300 applicants per job. You could apply to just mass apply to a bunch of different jobs. You're just not going to get a call back, or you might just get a random Dear John email. There's also a lot of things that might disqualify you that you just aren't aware of or you don't have control over it. Some places aren't prepared or can't hire certain people in certain states because of certain labor laws. I know California is a big one because they have even though your salary, you can't work overtime. So unless they have the infrastructure to be able to handle that, they just can't hire people in California, or that it takes some time to hire people in California. Nothing you can do about it. And they don't say that because you just don't know. So, you're going to apply to a bunch of jobs and you're going to get something back saying, thank you for your application. Um, don't worry about it. It's a lot of times it's not personal. And I know being on the other side of it, I'm like, oh my God, I want to call every single person, tell them it's not you, it's okay. We just had somebody else. Because I've been on that side. I've been applying and I don't get a call back. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so terrible. And I don't want people to think that. But the scale and the reality of it is it's just, you can't make that personal connection with everybody every time. One of the things that I did that really helped, and actually something I used for this, is just tracking your applications when you apply. I just did a spreadsheet. I know there's some cool applications out there. In fact, I think somebody wrote one for one of the hack upstates a couple years ago, maybe, where he was tracking his jobs. I think it was Peter that did that. Just track them because it helps you follow up. It helps you keep on it. But honestly, it was my like emotional tracking. So I kept a list of all the things, and I'm like, because I'll tell you, like I even went back and looked at it. I'm like, man, it took me like 10 months to find my last job. I applied for like 50 things. I was so like bent out of shape about it. And then I look back, I'm like, oh, no, it wasn't. It wasn't that bad at all. And it kind of kept me on that, narrowing level because I don't know if it's like you guys, but for me, every job I apply to, I'm like, oh, I got this. And I start picturing myself, I got this job. I'm going to be working here. It's going to be so fun. I'm going to meet this guy. His name's Pete. He's going to be awesome. You start like putting it in your head and stuff like that. And then you don't get the job. And if it's not even your fault, but you're just like, oh, that could have been, what could have happened? That could have been so great. So, I mean, just do what you can and be prepared for that like emotional journey. If you plan for it ahead of time, it's going to be okay. It's going to take a little while, but you're going to do great. Um, so let's say you get that final call, and you get that first call back. It's like you got that initial interview, and you're excited. Well, that initial interview is usually passing a Turing test. It's usually somebody calling you, say, "Hey, are you actually a person, and am I allowed to employ you?" Like just basic questions like, "Are you allowed to work in the United States? Have you committed any felonies? Is there something else I should know about that? Like maybe you should tell me." Because I mean, interviewing is an expensive, and hiring is an expensive process for companies. Just posting jobs could cost them like 10 grand a job just to post it in certain places. Interviewing means they're paying me as an employee who they pay me to code to stop doing that and to look at spreadsheets and to look at resumes and to call people and to do stuff. So that's expensive for companies. So they want to short circuit that as much as they can and save people time. So they're going to have somebody call you and say, "Hey, person, are you a person?" What's your name? Is there anything you'd like to tell us about that we might want to disqualify you on, something along those lines. It's generally not a technical interview, but it is good to have a few random, like non-technical questions, just to sound interested, because I think that's one of the biggest things I look for too, is sound interested in the job, have questions, do a little bit of research on that, on the job, on the company, stuff like that. Have questions like, how's the office? How big is the office? What are the working hours? The things that they don't put on their obvious job rec. But ask them things that might be interesting to you. But at least ask things that make it sound like you're interested in that position. Um, Generally, I don't think you're going to fail this part because most of you are human. Um, but it's one thing that they do, and be ready for, because I've done a couple interviews where I'm like, oh, they're going to call me, it's so exciting, and I'll have like all my resume up, I'll have all this stuff, and it's like a 10-minute conversation with like the head of HR. We're like, hey person, do you have a social security number? Yep. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to schedule another interview soon. Like, oh crap, you either take off half the day for the interview and then you feel silly. So that leads to the second, or the fourth part, but usually the second part of the interview, which is a technical interview. This is the one that's gonna hurt. This is the one where they start grilling you. They really want to figure out, if you know your stuff. They're really gonna come at you. Sadly, it's basically making decisions on stuff you'll never do in real life. It's really hard to interview people in a way that you can get an idea of how they would code on a day-to-day basis, because you have such little time with them, broken up in little sections. So they try to fake it out by coming up with like funny questions or interesting questions and things like that to try and catch you off guard. It's mostly a Q&A session. It's mostly, much as I hate to say it, a bunch of nerds asking nerdy questions. Um, they'll probe you on your overall and specific knowledge. I know I set up my questions to start out really easy and then get harder and harder and harder. I usually am upfront with it. I will ask you harder and harder and harder questions until you get one wrong. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for you to specifically get one wrong, but just to see how far you know. Getting a wrong answer is not a bad thing, and I think that's something I struggle with too. Wrong answers are good. Wrong answers give you the opportunity to show what you would do if you don't know something, especially if you're just starting out. That's what I'm more interested in. I don't care if you know everything, because chances are you're not going to. I'll be completely honest. I've been doing this for longer than I'd like to admit, and I still Google stuff every day. I still forget the order of arguments on a function and have to go look it up. So why would I expect you to know this stuff off the top of your head if I'm doing it? So, but I think that's kind of the general impression, because you got a whole bunch of people and they're asking you really hard questions like, are you smart? Are you smart? Are you smart? No, it's not how you work. That's not how you're going to do your job on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to memorize the entire language off the top of your head. You're going to have to look stuff up. You're going to look for orders of, magnitude stuff. You're going to look for arguments. You're going to look for all kinds of stuff. Or you're just going to look for random inspiration online. I mean, I've had problems where like, how should I solve that? And Stack Overflow showed up. I love Stack Overflow sometimes. So it's your opportunity to show, all right, what am I going to do if you don't know something? Don't be afraid to say, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but here's what I think the answer is, and this is how I would look it up. This is how I figure out whether I'm right or wrong. That's super important, because quite honestly, I want somebody that I can trust to go off and do something and not have to babysit them. And you being able to look up and figure out answers on your own is way more important than you knowing everything, because you're just not going to know everything. So having the ability to look stuff up, showing them that you have the ability to look stuff up is really great. There's going to be questions in there that are going to be phrased to figure out the type of developer, how far along you are. Like this says, what's this function parsint do, right? It's just basically gets a number out of a string. It sounds pretty simple. If I ask you, how would you get a number out of a string? If you're new to the language, you're going to say, oh, parsint, it does it. But if you've done it for a while, you know that's a super tricky question, because parsint does a whole bunch of different things in the back end that you're not quite sure what's going to happen. So the question could try to figure out whether you're a senior at that position, whether you've been doing it for a long time, or whether you're new. And just that basic answer, with you not realizing it, might tell me that information. So just be honest. I mean, that's the biggest thing too, right? Just be honest with it. Um, there are also long form questions where there is no single correct answer. Those are generally probing questions to figure out, how you would set up your code, different skills that you might have, looking for how you would solve a little bit of a bigger problem without getting too in depth with things. Um, because there's more to being a programmer than just knowing how to write code. There's being able to log into a server, being able to do things on the command line. So they're going to ask you questions that give you the ability to show, hey, I know how to do this. I know how to turn on a web server on a VM, let's say, or you know how to set up a CI/CD pipeline, things like that that you guys will learn here. Um, we're going to ask those kinds of questions. We're going to ask open-ended questions just to see how you think, just to prove what you know. But don't worry about them too much because they're open-ended. So saying I don't know is not a bad thing at all because I'm okay with that. I'm willing to accept that hey, you don't know how to create a CI/CD pipeline or you don't know how to administer a Jenkins server. It's okay. That's fine. You just have to be honest with it and you just have to talk through it because it's mostly a conversation. It comes off as a question and answer, but a lot of times I really like a conversation. I don't like people that just I don't know or just have quick answers to things because I mean, I'm going to talk to you while we're at work or over Slack or however that's going to be. So just be able to talk about it. Um, Once you get through that, hopefully you do. Sometimes it can be grueling, but then there's also the practical interview. If you can't tell, I don't like practical interviews, but a lot of places do it, and it is important to be able to be prepared for it because essentially it's homework. They're going to give you this really open-ended, you know, problem statement, or they're going to give you this thing saying, "Hey, build me a chat room application that allows real-time anonymous chat." And they'll tell you some. I've had some places like, "Oh yeah, here's this really long set of requirements. It's going to take you like 2 hours." Jerks. It took me like half a day, if not longer, just to try and approach some of this stuff. But that's the reality of it, especially when you're getting a lot of interviews. They need to do stuff offline. They need to send you away and get you to come back because they can't spend 2 days directly with you programming, which sucks sometimes. So be prepared, and especially if you're putting on a lot of applications at once. I know my last job search, I had 3 or 4 of these to do at a time while I was also employed. I mean, that's like a second job all of a sudden, and you're not getting paid for this stuff. So be prepared for some of that stuff. Um, it's it's just the unfortunate reality of where we work. It's a great way but it is a great way to show how you build a project from the ground up. It's a great way for you to put your little touches into it. Like maybe I'm going to ask you to build a chat room and you're going to add unit tests to that. I'll be impressed. I'll like it. I mean, or you add like server setup and you add a whole like README file with how to run it and stuff like that, as opposed to just meeting the bare requirements. There's plenty of room to impress me. There's plenty of room to impress whoever's interviewing you. So you can put a little bit of flair in it. You can put a little bit of humor in it. I always appreciate humor. I like it when people put random humorous comments and things and stuff like that. That's always good. So just, I mean, take something bad like a lot of work, like you're going to spend 4 hours doing this, and turn it around and make it so that you shine. Put yourself into it. Put some humor into it. Put whatever you want into it. Um, but do put a little bit of effort into it because they're going to expect it. And some places will, disqualify you if you can't do it. The other big thing that I always try to stress is submit it even if you can't get it to work. Um, put 4 hours of work trying to build a chat room application, and if you don't get it finished, submit it anyway. Because one of the first things I'm going to ask you is like, all right, what troubles did you have? What did you run into? Stuff like that. And that's a perfectly good and valuable conversation to have with your employer or prospective employer. Um, Biggest thing is you're just, I mean, you might not be able to get it all done, but at least you can talk about it and say, all right, I had trouble setting up my Docker images to work correctly, or I had trouble getting the real-time chat to work because I wasn't comfortable with it. That's totally okay. Depending on the level, that's perfectly acceptable and maybe even expected. I will admit some places will give you, questions that are probably hard or impossible to solve because they want to find out what you do about it, right? I think it's a little jerky, but some places have done that. Um, they just want to see how far you get or what you do to accomplish it, or they'll ask you. I'll definitely ask you what you did to try and solve the problem that you couldn't solve. And maybe if I have enough time, I might even try to help you solve the problem. Um, Take a shot. Like I said, I mean, we're starting from the beginning. We're applying anyway. Just keep going. Don't give up. Just give it what you got, and you'll be surprised how far you'll get. Because honestly, a lot of people give up quickly, and that's sad. Because just because you don't have the answer doesn't mean you're not the right fit for stuff. Um, they may do this too. They may do this instead of the practical interview, but there's generally a live coding interview, and I will be 100% honest with you. I'm terrible at this. It's so bad. I mean, the worst ones I'm at are when you're in a room with people and they hand you a marker. I get like my stomach immediately twists because like here's a marker and they're like, all right, write a function that can build a Pascal's triangle out of an array, and I'm like, I don't, and I'll lock up and then I'm like function crap, and I can't write. It's bad. So the biggest thing I will do, and something that I've done, is practice, because it's not something you're ever going to get taught. Like I mean, I've got a comp sci degree. They didn't teach me to live code on a whiteboard. You're not going to get taught here how to live code on a whiteboard because nobody works that way. Nobody does that. This isn't like TV where like the hacker shows up and has like the perfect algorithm to fix something. You're going to be sitting there Googling for like 10 minutes trying to figure out what is a Pascal triangle. I don't even know what the crap that is. Um,
That's kind of entertaining because a friend told me he's also been in the business forever, and he
mm,
said they wanted me to code. I didn't even go to the interview. Forget it.
yeah, I mean,
Okay, then he's like, I didn't even go.
I mean, I honestly, yes, please do that. I would. Oh my goodness, if you get to the point in your life where like you've got a job so you can not go to that job. I mean, obviously, if you need a job, you kind of like, all right, I'll do it anyway. But I have done that before where I'm like, you know what, I don't got time for this. And so it's like, I mean, especially like
He
with.
also said he Googles,
Hmm.
and
Oh yeah.
learned in a way that requires using other people's code, and
Yeah.
I have been in interviews and gotten to this step and said,
see ya.
uh, and I said, look, I'm interested in the job, but I know how to write for loops, I know how to write functions. I
Right.
don't know what a Pascal triangle is off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Can you either let me know, or do you mind if I Google it on my phone?
Yeah.
And I'll pull out my phone and Google it because they're like, oh, we don't want to give you any help. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to,
Right.
but I'm gonna go Google it because you're not gonna give me help in my job. I'm gonna Google it.
Yep.
And they say, no, this is like closed book. I'm like, all right, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry it took this long in the interview process.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
walk out.
Yeah. Do us all a favor and walk out. For those, make those people suffer. They suck.
Let go of that momentum, or
It has evolved.
Hmm.
Google gets a lot of press on what their interview process was like. An interesting question that we ask is, how many barbers are there in New York City? People are like, barbers in New York City? I'm sorry, I'm interviewing for a technical job.
Hmm.
And we're like, yeah, but how many barbers do you think there are in New York City?
can you Google it?
And the idea behind it is that we get to see their thought process. If people go, oh, well, the population of New York is, and we don't expect them to have that
Right.
exact number off their top of the head, but if they go 100,000, we're like,
Hello.
okay, red flag, like, why aren't you connected there? But if they go, oh, it's probably around, I don't know, 30 million, it's like, oh, okay, close enough. All right, and then just think through the process in your head. All right, if people get their hair cut every couple weeks,
Hard cap.
right, and then
Mhm.
you start going in, oh, and just if they get anywhere close, we don't care what their answer is. We just want to see them thinking through the process. So you will get some creative problems like that, but then you will also get these technical interview questions
Yeah.
where they're like, oh, we want you to have the syntactically correct thing, and I'm like, how do I indent properly on my phone?
Right.
Like, all right, see you guys. Like,
Yeah.
I will attempt it, but
Pretty much. I can't even write straight on a whiteboard, let alone
right.
indent. Right? That's ridiculous. Like, and then I'm expecting linting and where's my little squiggly lines if I wrote something wrong. It's terrible. Um, it took me forever.
I can't write the at sign.
The at sign I'm okay with, but then I can't do the and because it's similar, and my hand keeps wanting to do the squiggly, and yeah, it's bad. It's all just traps. So yes, seriously, please walk out of those interviews because I hate those people. Those are terrible. Um, we do some, and now this is going to make me sound like a hypocrite. We do a little bit of live coding when we do our interviews, but it's on a computer with an IDE, so you're not terrible. And one of the things I always look for is I look for them to stop and say, "Hey, can I Google something?" Because the answer is yes. Please Google something. I don't want to stand here and watch you think about it for 5 minutes when you could just Google it and be done in 10 seconds. Um, there is there's a dailycodingproblem.com that I actually signed up for and started doing some of them. Basically, every day they'll email you common questions that are asked on interviews. You'll get a little question like write a link a function that'll generate a linked list, or all those basic things that people write because you got to practice them because nobody does that because nobody makes their own linked lists anymore. But B, I mean, you're just not built that way. That's not how you think. That's not how you work. Um, when we do our live coding, it's best to stall. It's best to start with like unit test or start, because the biggest thing I want to hear is talking. So start talking about the problem. Be like, all right, while I'm typing out the name of the function, I'm going to talk about how I would solve the problem. Because I mean, quite honestly, if you tell me how you're going to solve the problem, I'll be like, all right, good enough, done. I don't care. It's fine. That's all I really care about. I don't want you to write a good function because I'm not going to use it. I've got 70 examples of how to write this function. I don't need it. This isn't something we need. So I'm just looking for you to show me your thought process. One thing I'm interested in, do you know how many barbers there are in New York City?
No, I don't.
So if they got the answer right, you wouldn't even know.
No clue.
No. So it's just that's just how it is, right? It's all about figuring out your thought process. So find ways for you to show off your thought process. You know, whip out that brain and flex it, and impress them, because that's the best part. Because I've had so many live interviews where they just stopped talking and started writing code, and I'm like, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm like, that's not what I want to know. I don't want you to, this isn't like a right answer question. Don't write the function and go ta-da, because now I know nothing other than you might know this ahead of time. So yeah, just through your entire process, try not to think of it as a technical interview, because it's really about showing how you solve problems and how you're going to work on a day-to-day basis. So let's review. And something, I don't know if you guys go on Reddit or not, but why do they always put the TLDRs at the bottom? Like, why do you have to scroll through the entire thing to get to the TLDR?
What's TLDR stand for?
It's too long, didn't read.
Oh,
So when I do it, I write a super long post, and then I go, oh, my bad, I didn't plan on writing a super long post, and so I will write a TLDR, and I'm like, all right, here's the 2-sentence summary of my 2-page post that I just wrote.
Right. But it's always at the bottom. So you read through it and you're like, oh, I could have just read this 2-line thing.
where
Crap.
do you use this?
So
Anywhere. It's just a
post online or write a blog post.
yeah. So like if you're writing a blog post, put it at the top. Just write TLDR and then a quick summary of what you're about to write, because some people don't have time for that. So some people don't want to read a 15-minute post when there's only 2 lines of summary at the top. So it's basically just your summary, things along those lines. So let's review a little bit. So your resume, keep it simple, make it relevant, short and sweet. I know like as I was brought up, they're like, oh, keep your resume down to a single page. That's kind of true. It's kind of not true. But I mean, honestly, I'd like to be able to look at your resume and look for the information I have instead of having to flip through things. I think I've hired people that have had 5-page resumes, but it wasn't because of the resume. Yep.
I have a question about resumes actually and
Sure.
algorithms. So, I met with somebody from SU as an alum. We get like free career services or whatever,
Mhm.
and she was basically like, create a new resume for every job you apply for, and I was like, that sounds absolutely absurd. Why
Mhm.
would I do that? And yeah, and I was like, okay, I get it for like if you're applying for different types of jobs, that's
Yeah.
fine. But all for tech jobs, right? Like if you're applying and you have like the languages that you know and all kinds of things like that on there, do the algorithms like pick up keywords still, or is that like they look for keywords, right? So if you
Yeah.
pull like a keyword from a job posting and you put it on your resume, it's probably gonna flag your resume better, or is that like not true?
It depends on which one. Like the ones that I've used, they haven't actually looked for words from the job posting. They just look for basic information like, yeah, what companies you've worked for, how long you've worked for that. They'll look for any schooling that you might mention, look for your name and address, things along those lines. They're not going to pick out like, yeah, don't tailor your resume.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I didn't
Please
have
don't.
plans to, as like
No.
it sounds ridiculous and
It,
finicky, but just wanted to make sure.
yeah, it's not important. Like I mean, I look at a resume just to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also the what else do they do sometimes? The cover letters and stuff like that. You can tailor that a little bit.
Right.
I don't like places that require cover letters, because then you feel like I gotta write a statement saying, hey, I totally love Company Foo. I'd love to work for Company Foo. Here's why I'd be great at Company Foo. I'm like, yeah, of course you would. You're applying for the job. I know that already. So it's like yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't put a ton of effort into your resume. I mean, honestly, if a company really cares about your resume, you don't want to work for them. They're caring about the wrong thing anyway. So, did you have a question?
Yeah, and I think you already answered it.
No, it's fine.
So career changers, you see a lot of career changer resumes, and
Mhm.
what do you do with the first 50 years? Yeah, what did they call that previous system?
You could put it on there. It's totally
Right,
okay.
it's gonna set off like, what the?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's, I mean, A, you want to kind of show that you've been employed consistently, because that's kind of a, sometimes some people care about that. I don't, I mean, maybe I'll ask you if you got a good story, like you were a pirate for 2 years and you don't have, I mean, that's cool. Tell me about that. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, I for the longest time, my first job was at McDonald's, and then I worked at Aeropostale, and then I worked at McLean's. I put that stuff on there because, yeah, I was employed since.
See career changer resumes?
I do. I actually had, and I was unfortunate I didn't call her. I really wanted to because I feel like there was a really good story, but we had somebody apply for a senior developer position who currently worked at a Payless as a manager. And I'm like, ooh, cool. I wonder if there's like a really cool story to that, but there was nothing else in the resume. I'm like no experience, no college, and I'm like, I just like part of me is like really curious. I'm like, I should just call her, but then I was like, I got sidetracked and we hired somebody, and I'm like, dang it, like it still bugs me today. I'm like, I should have called this person. This could be like a really cool story.
Wait, that's all they had, wait, that's all they had was
Yeah,
a
that's
Payless?
all they had was like a, I worked at, I'm a manager at a Payless shoes, and I'm like, there's got to be a reason for this. I know, I need to know what the reason is for this. So that might work to your advantage and be like, hey, wherever you worked before, like, okay, and she's got a career change, totally okay. That is, I mean, just put something in there. I mean, don't have an empty resume because that's going to be like, oh, that's weird. They've never worked before. So, I mean, show you're at least employable. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying you were a nurse or you worked at a Payless. That's totally okay. We've all done it. We've all worked there. It's totally fine. So,
I just saw a great posting online. The interviewer goes, "Oh, I see there's a 2 year gap in your resume. Why?" And the interviewer goes, "Oh, I was in prison." And the interviewer goes, "Oh, what for?
Which
You
one?
know, like we need."
yeah.
And the developer goes, "Oh, I've been writing Action script for the last 2 years, and I thought prison would have been better."
Wow.
Oh, action script.
So how far back would you go for
Uh,
like somebody older like myself who's had a bazillion jobs since I was 16?
I would go less than a bazillion. I would go, just fill out your resume. Just, I mean, it depends, right? If you've got a ton of jobs, just go fill a page, or just, and then say et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or, the rest of them on request, something like that. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't really matter too much. I mean, don't put your age on there because A, you're not supposed to, and we're not supposed to consider it. So,
What about graduation dates though? That like gives it away.
then don't put one.
Don't put one?
You don't have to.
True.
I'll believe you. You graduated.
A lot of resumes, a lot of applications say what year, you know?
You'd be surprised how many things you can leave empty and they accept.
So going back more than 10 years, you're saying?
I wouldn't bother. I mean, fill out a page worth of stuff. It doesn't. I mean, if none of the experience really matters for the new job, then just list out. I mean, if you want to, you can list them all out as single line items. Don't put like what you did and your responsibilities. Just list it out if you really care. But I don't. I mean, it'll be a cool story. Be like, hey, yeah, you worked at McDonald's too. All right, we're McDonald's buddies. Maybe that might be cool. But I mean, other than that, it's not a big deal.
You want to be showing growth on your
Yeah.
resume. So if the position was a stepping stone in your career, it's worth putting on there, even if it spills onto a second page. But if you're listing out your first job, it's like no, just comma separate that and say previous experience also includes, and then
All right.
list all of that out.
Yeah. I mean, they might ask you about it. You could just talk about it, and that's fine too. So, I mean, I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Most of what I'm going to be looking for is, what technical abilities you have, what languages you know, does it line up with what we're looking for? Is there anything cool that I might ask you? Because I'll be honest, as nervous as you are at an interview, the interviewees or the interviewers are just as nervous. Like I've done it forever, and I'm still like nervous to call someone. I'm like, I'll be on there if it's especially if you do video stuff. I'll be on there like 10 minutes early because I want to make sure that I'm there if they show up early, so that doesn't look bad. And I don't want them to worry about it whether we're going to show up or not. To try and help them out, and then we start in this like weird feedback loop where you end up like 6 hours early to your resume or your interview. So it's anything cool you could put on there, like being a pirate, start a conversation that way, or just cool things that you've done, or don't list any jobs and just list all of the projects you've worked on. If you don't have a lot of experience, work on open source projects. Like find open source projects on GitHub and commit to them and be like, hey, I here's all the projects that I did, and don't list any employment experience. Say I helped out with this, or I redocumented this, or I added new features to this thing that, and if I use it, I'd be like, hey, that's really awesome. Because I mean, we've all used open source software, so we all depend on each other for that kind of stuff anyway. So if you don't want to do experience, do that instead. So
So is it more important like what you can do versus like your education?
yes, I don't want to turn you away from college if you still want to go, or if you want to go back, or whatever you want to do. I have got a comp sci degree. I usually was in the minority with every place that I worked at, and I'll be honest, I appreciated my time in school. I learned some really neat things. I apply none of it to what I do now. I learned C in school. I've never worked with C. I learned Java in school. I don't ever want to work with Java. It's not really that important, especially with the way technology moves now. If you know JavaScript and ES6, that just came out a couple of years ago. So I went to school a while ago, and all that stuff wasn't around then, so it doesn't matter anymore. So having the experience like doing this code boot camp here, they're teaching you ES6 JavaScript. That's hot right now. You're going to have that hot ability, and you're going to have that ability over somebody that's been writing Pascal for 26 years. They got 26 years of experience in something I don't care about.
So, I mean, when I was looking up a lot of internships, at least you have to be a student, like enrolled in a 4 year college, or like most of the jobs is like you have to
Yeah.
have a bachelor degree. So that's
It is a little tough because it's almost a requirement now. Everybody just puts down must have 4 years, but a lot of times they'll add must have 4 years of college or equivalent experience. And going way back to the beginning, right? Where is it? Ignore requirements. Just ignore them. I could say you need a doctorate in computer science and must be a published white paper with a Nobel laureate. I'm going to hire somebody that knows exactly what I want them to do right away. I just have to put that there. So a lot of places, especially with big companies, they have HR that's like must have a degree and all this other stuff. You don't want to work for those places anyway. I've worked for places like that. They're awful. It's so monolithic. It's so terrible. You don't want to work there anyway. Trust me. Just so ignore all of that. If internships, if they require you to do school, then they're probably doing like a school internship and they write it off and they get credit for it. So you might get a little precluded there. But some internships will take anybody, even people that are doing career in codes or something like that. Apply anyway. What are they going to do? Say no?
My favorite job application I did, it said require 10 years of React. And I contacted them and I said, just a heads up, I'm not applying to you because no one can meet that requirement. And they're like, what do you
Oh,
mean
yeah.
no one? And I said, the founder of React couldn't meet a requirement for 10 years of React
Yep.
experience. It hasn't been around for that long.
Yeah.
Extensive blockchain experience.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, right. Must have 20 years of JavaScript experience. Like, oh, cool, you guys writing Moo tools? What is this? I don't want to work here. This is terrible. So, yeah, just.
So in part what you're saying is that sometimes the people writing the job descriptions are not people that actually know what the job requires.
Or
Very
what
much
their
so.
job
Very, very much so. Because a lot of times, especially for bigger companies, they'll ask me, "Hey, what do you need for job requirements?" And I'll list out stuff, and then it'll go to someone in HR, and they're like, "This is too long, so I'm going to start combining some of them where you'll get like 10 years." So I say, "Must have 10 years of programming experience, must have React." They're like, "Oh, we'll combine it and say must have 10 years of React." They don't know. They're just like, it's all Greek to me. I don't know what it is. We need to fit in this box of 100 characters, so they'll strip it out and do whatever. Just, yeah.
So
It's a.
I was actually looking last night and I saw internships.
Mhm.
SRC, is that a big hire
Yep.
around here?
Yeah.
And they were
I've seen a lot of
looking at
them.
Facebook jobs, and there were other ones in project management. I've got lots of years
Yeah.
managing people,
Hmm.
but not in web dev. You know, it was a whole bunch of things like we want more project management, program management,
Hmm.
and then you have to know all this code and all this code, and you better have 20 years in this code, and you better know how to do this because you should do all facets, but they're paying a certain amount that couldn't possibly
Hmm.
be that level. So this is making some sense
Yeah. They.
in that you're not going to find that there's not enough years.
No,
And
there really
Okay,
isn't.
to have that much project management. Well,
And part of it is also their algorithms are going through and scraping your resume,
Mhm.
but you're doing that in reverse.
right.
So when you're searching for jobs, you search for JavaScript another things, and it's like because there are other boot camps that teach Python, and so they list it all out just so when you search for Python, that job description comes up.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of a two-way street, but I have gone through plenty of resume or postings, and it's just like these requirements are insane. No one has
Right,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
You could be a 30-year veteran of the software industry and just not meet all those requirements.
No,
Wow.
please ignore them.
Mhm.
And also be wary of places that say you need Java and JavaScript experience because they could be confused and think they're the same. Get that a lot. In fact, that's one of the first questions I ask when I interview is like, what's the difference between Java and JavaScript? Or is Java and JavaScript the same? I've had a people fail that, and it was really short.
Can I ask where you work? And maybe you said it in the
I
beginning.
work for a company called Swim Lane out of Denver.
Swim,
Swim Lane.
Lane,
Swim Lane. Yep.
Do you travel there much?
Maybe like 4 times a year.
Oh,
So
that's good.
yeah, look for work from home jobs if you can get them too. That's nice.
Gold.
Oh, mm.
Are there internship work from home internships?
That one would be tough because a lot of times they want to keep an eye on their interns. But I could see like a lot of companies, like Swim Lane has gotten, they do have a main office, but there are companies that are 100% remote no matter what, which case totally apply for that. And again, still always apply for it. You never know. There's companies that will say no work from home, but if you apply and they like you, they'll make an exception for you. Um, and that's, I mean, I can't stress it enough. Just really ignore all the requirements because they could be screwed up, they could be flat wrong, or they could really like you and be like, you know what? I don't care. We're gonna hire you anyway. Done that before. Um,
I've also applied for jobs and they said you're a terrible fit for this role, but you're a great fit
yes.
for this other role, and we haven't even posted it yet. Would
Yep.
you like that one? It's like,
Yes.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Or yeah, you get apply for a job and they're like, yeah, you know what? I mean, you don't have enough experience to be a senior, but we were thinking about opening a junior or a regular software engineering job. We'll keep you at the top of the list. We've already interviewed you. Like I said, it costs money to interview. It costs money to post jobs. They might be like, this would be way easier. We like this person anyway. We're just gonna give them the job. Man, that'd be great, right? So, yeah, it's.
Like as a woman, this might be really uncomfortable. As a scientist, this makes me really uncomfortable. But I'm gonna listen to you guys and just like apply for stuff that I seem really unqualified for
Oh yeah.
and say I don't know when they ask me the question
Mm-hmm.
and try to talk about it.
The
Yes.
worst thing that you get is experience from doing an interview.
Yeah.
You go, look, I wasn't even planning on getting this. I think this is way out of my scope, but I just did a practice interview. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
if it was for a real posting or not. I just interviewed with someone who interviews people.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's my practice.
You just got experience for free. You didn't have to pay
Yeah.
for it.
One thing that I'm curious about is there's some things that I've learned, but I'm not 100% like I don't know. I don't have all the knowledge or information. I'm not 100% comfortable with it, but
Hmm.
I'm familiar with it. Is that something that you mention or you bring up in your resume?
I wouldn't bring it up in the resume, but I would mention it.
Oh,
And you don't have to mention it. You know, don't start the conversation with "Hi, I'm unfamiliar with this," right? But bring it up. Bring it up naturally. I mean, it'll come up if it's a good interview. They'll find out anyway, and they'll come up naturally. They'll be like, "I'll get to a point where I'm going to ask you a question, and you're not going to be comfortable with it." And you say, "Hey, you know what? I haven't done that before. Um, I think maybe the answer is this." I would check by Googling it, or I would check by looking for other, talking to my friends who might have done it before. I would, you know, ask a question about it, or I would ask some, you know, a senior developer. I'd ask somebody else at work. All of those are great answers because that means they don't. A, I don't expect you to know everything, and B, that means you can go out and get something done because you're going to ask.
what if you have done it, but it's been a while since you've done it and you forgot a lot of
That's
stuff?
that's okay too. I forgot half this thing already. So.
Putting up. Okay, sorry. Are there like specific websites that you use to look for like jobs in this field, or like you just use normal?
um.
Like, do they post on specific places? Because I know, like, so I'm a teacher, so
Mhm.
there's specific ones for teaching, um, like that some districts use, like OLAS, some districts use Teacher Match. Like,
Right.
so is there special ones for this or no?
This might be a little bit more biased from my opinion, right? But I think Stack Overflow has a job section, which is a good place. I liked it before, then I found afterwards that each like job is like 10 grand for them to put it there. So you know they mean it if they spent that kind of money on it, right? So one of the places I really liked, I think it was like WeWorkRemotely.com is another one that I really liked because I was new to trying to find remote jobs because I used to work for Time Warner Cable before they folded and went to charter, and that was a whole fun story. Um, and so it's a um, the Rework Remotely was a really good one, and there was another one I forget what it was. But yeah, there are places. Stack Overflow is a good one. I mean, Monster's okay, Dice is all right, but I mean, some of them are so full of spam.
I'm not a fan of like Monster and Indeed and
Yeah,
stuff, so that's why I was asking just to like really irritate me.
Stack Overflow is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there like certain keywords that you would search for looking for a job versus like, because I have no idea what I want to do.
Hmm.
This is what I'm doing.
Right.
So like to start out in a job, like are there certain things that I should be looking for versus not?
Um, No, I mean, because if you don't know, just apply to everything and try it out, right? I mean, that's true in life, right? If you don't know, try it out. Try different foods, try different things. If you're looking for a specific language, like you guys are doing JavaScript, so you'd obviously search for JavaScript jobs, right? You know, you might be looking for full stack jobs because I think you guys are doing full stack. So look for full stack, even though nowadays everybody's full stack. It's like farm to table. It's another word I hate. Everything's farm to table. Where do you think food comes from? It's full stack is another one you could do if you're looking for specifically back end, or if you feel more creative, you want to do front end, you can look for UI or API and stuff like that. So you can do that. But I mean, honestly, most places don't really list out the specifics of the job in a way that you can search for it. I mean, the best you could get is, I mean, if you're looking for a back end job, search for back end. I mean, some people list them out as senior back end developer. Other people just say senior engineer, and you have no idea. You have to read the whole thing to do it. So, I mean, it does take time and it does take a lot of work, but yeah, try it out. I don't have anything specific I look for. Yep.
Two questions. My old life LinkedIn was not like you didn't see anything there. Never went there.
Hmm.
Just I had something there. Is it important? That's one of two questions I have.
It is and it isn't. For tech, probably not. Like
That's good to know.
I'm gonna Google you and maybe I'll try to find you on LinkedIn. If I can't find you, I'm like, that's fine. They're probably cool.
Better.
I would say it's important only because when you're in the middle of a business meeting or someone's about to, have an appointment with you or something, um, I always go right to LinkedIn and type in their name,
Hmm.
because it is more the business. Like, I don't care about your Facebook. I want a quick background of where you've worked.
Good to know.
If you have
I
your
did that to
Okay, good to know.
if you have your resume structured properly, it's very easy to copy and paste right into
Right.
LinkedIn.
him.
And it is worthwhile to set up a LinkedIn and connect to every student in the class, connect to Jesse, connect to Doug, connect to every instructor, because now LinkedIn is very network oriented. So now, because that you've connected to all the instructors, and once you connect to Doug, you can pretty much access anyone in upstate New York because he's a big networker. So all those little links definitely help. And when you apply for a job and someone searches for you, they go, "Oh, she knows Doug.
Mhm.
There's a
Good.
connection there, and there's a little."
Yeah.
Second half of the question is it would be if you're interested in security,
Mhm.
and it's from what I know of academe, it's like when they check your resume, they line it up next to social security records, and they do a background on you, and it better say the dates. 86, you better than, where you said you were, right?
Mhm.
Social security record. So that's what, yeah, well, that A dates me, and B also, like, if it says you're going to need a security clearance, can you not send a resume that has
If they need more information for you for a
they'll,
security clearance,
yeah.
they
Yes.
will ask.
So the
Yes.
initial resume doesn't
No.
have to.
And they
Bingo. Thank you.
very infrequently have I done security or jobs that require security clearance. They will basically give you the offer pending a security
Pending,
clearance.
Mhm.
exactly. Okay.
And I mean, with those
I
jobs,
just still
they'll
like
check your
the
security
whole
clearance.
resume dates thing.
Yeah.
I feel like stuck on.
Leave them out. It's fine.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. I mean, I'm gonna. Yeah. If I can like go back through and I'm like, holy crap, this person's super old, I mean that you put me into a bad spot because I'm not supposed to know that because I can't turn you down because of that. And if somebody does turn you down because of that, ooh, beat them up. They're not supposed to do that at all. So don't even give them the opportunity to because
Right,
A, it's hard to
yeah.
prove, but B, it's just don't even put it in their head.
Yeah.
Um,
I look younger, so that helps.
Also, don't post your face on your resume. That's kind of weird too, but yet, I mean, yeah, don't put your face on there. We don't need headshots in a computer.
People's emails are signed with their face.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think so,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, pretty much. So yeah, you don't have to put a headshot on there. We're not acting. It's fine. Yeah, the other thing about LinkedIn though is be careful because once you get on there, it's especially once you start connecting with a bunch of people, you'll start getting recruiters hitting you up a lot,
Oh my god.
and they're terrible. I hate them so much.
Student loan collectors also.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I hate that.
Yeah, yeah. Recruiters are terrible because if you think the job rec is terrible, try talking to a recruiter who doesn't understand the job rec, and they have no idea what's going on. And they're like, "Hey, I see you know computers, therefore you'd be great at this other thing that's randomly arbitrary to that." And you're like, "Oh, cool, a recruiter wants to talk to me," and then you're like, "Oh, this guy's an idiot." Oh.
I get like, oh, would you like a full-time position in Phoenix, Arizona
Yeah.
for Python?
Yes, right.
I'm not
The
in
snake?
Python.
Oh.
I'm in Syracuse. I'm right in. So
Right.
it is. I don't suggest ruling out working with a recruiter entirely. But
Yep.
if you do work with a recruiter, make sure they are a technical recruiter. I have talked to some recruiters, and I'm like, oh, I'm a full stack developer. Is this a front end or back end position? And they go, what's front end?
Mm.
And then I start explaining it to them, and I'm like,
God.
whoa, this is
Yeah.
not my job to explain to you what you're trying to hire for.
Right. I mean, if you're going to work with a recruiter, work with a recruiter that's not working for the company you want to work for. So there's recruiters that will just pick you up and like try to align you with certain places. I think like Adecco and a couple other places have some really good recruiters. Oh yeah, there's whole companies that their whole company is based around finding people and finding jobs for those people because they get money off the top. But yeah, there's whole. I've worked with some good ones in Syracuse. There's great people. So it's worth it. Just don't assume that a recruiter that's working for a company is maybe in your best interest. It's kind of the same thing like HR. It's not it's human resources. They're managing you. They're not helping you. So it's that kind of thing. So yeah, exactly. Any other questions before we move on? We do have a Q&A at the end too, so.
Oh, I thought we were already there.
Oh,
Sorry.
we're almost there. We're like 2 slides from it. 2 slides. It's okay.
I was just wondering, is having too many jobs, like I mean, being out of job for a short period of time, like have people kind of like ruled out some applicants because of that?
I think it used to be that way, but nowadays, company loyalty isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah, our generation moves around a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad's worked at Crucible for like 30 years now,
Nobody does
and
that anymore.
yeah, and they treat him like crap because they know he's not going anywhere. So it's not as big of a deal anymore, especially if you have an answer for it. Be like, yeah, I started working there, and it turns out they're all Nazis, and I left. Like, yeah, all right, good to know. I'm gonna write that one down. So I mean, just have an answer for it, and it's totally fine. Except for working for Nazis, that's not fine at all. So back to applications, like you said, know your needs, and please always apply for every job. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Just apply. Don't think you're new and you're not good enough or anything else like that. I'd rather take someone new that just learned ES6 than somebody, like I said, that's been writing Cobalt for 26 years, because he's not going to be nearly as good as you. It might not seem that, because like, oh, he's got 25 years of experience, but it's in something I don't need. So don't worry about it. It's fine, especially if you can shine in the interview. I mean, we'll practice interviews and stuff like that. Totally okay. Um, Track your journey and accept rejection because rejection is automated now. So don't take it personally. It sucks. It sucks. I mean, it is. I mean, it's so automated nowadays. Like I've accidentally sent rejection letters to people I've tried to hire because the manager closed out the job rec, and if you didn't mark them as interested, it just auto spams everybody in there to the job. And all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, I just got an email saying thanks for your time," and I'm like, "Oh, whoa, 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 hit the brakes." So it's all automated. It sucks, but it is what it is. With interviews, be prepared. Be honest. That's another big thing. Don't boast. I don't need to hear it. It's cool. That's great. You did something awesome. Nice. I'm more interested in what you're gonna do. And I think that's one of the things that's really benefiting you guys here is a lot of times in our position, we're more interested in what you're gonna do than what you did because we're not doing what you did and it doesn't matter. So just, protect who you are and then keep everyone involved. Um, I didn't really say too much about this, but ask questions and always be prepared for questions. I have not hired people because I got to the end of the interview. I'm like, do you have any questions? And they're like, nope. And I'm like, really? You don't have any questions at all? Nope. Nothing? Nope. All right. I mean, they didn't even bother to look anything up. They weren't interested. I got this bad feeling that I'm like, they're not interested. And I've got this other person who is interested and asked me what I do on a daily basis and asked me what I do for fun or asked what the company does for fun. I'd rather hire that person, not the person that got all the answers right and just doesn't care. So, I mean, I know this is all about technical interviews, but there is a lot of personal stuff too. And I know there's a second part to that, which might cover a lot of that stuff. So, any questions?
Well, what do you do all day, and what is your job like as
So I wake up and I decide whether I want to put pants on or not. No, it's nice. The work remote thing is nice, but it took me a while to get used to it. Um, what's that? Yep, yeah, I live in Baldensville.
Which
Um,
company do you work for again?
Swim lane,
And where is that located?
Denver.
Do they
Yes.
offer internships for that?
They do, but they have to be in the office. Sorry, because
I'm
they do
trying.
schools. Yeah, I keep trying. I totally get you. Um, so my daily thing. I mean, I work mostly over Slack. I don't. Do you guys have Slack for this at all? That's 100% of what I work over. That's all I do. I mean, we do video conferences on occasion and stuff like that, but for the most part, I'm just talking to people, hitting up people on Slack. I'll do one-on-one. I'll do pair programming with other people that I work with and stuff like that. But it's Slack and Jira are just ubiquitous nowadays, especially for remote stuff. Um, I just I sit at home and I work. I have an office. If you are going to work from home, I will suggest having an office because if you can't separate your home from your job, it all starts to become your job, and that sucks if you live at your job. Um, so, I mean, if you can separate that time, you can be really good because I also struggle with that. I don't know if they're listening, but it's tough to be focused for 8 hours in your house, especially if you got kids and dogs and a wife and all that other stuff. So it does take a little bit of effort, but yeah, I write code all day. Well, outside of meetings, you'll hate meetings eventually. But yeah, I write code. I specifically write security automation and orchestration code. So code that's supposed to go out and it's horizontally scalable onto a bunch of different machines and it can just automate events and run playbooks against it and enrich the data and send it someplace. Um, it's fun. I really like it. It's challenging, especially when you're trying to get performance out of things. You write code and you're like, hey, that works. That's cool. I'm like, all right, can it handle a billion things a second? And you're like, four. I tested it with four. So it's challenging.
Really fast. Does
Yeah,
that count?
right. Oh, oof. I had to. Yeah, you end up writing code to test your other code, and that's a fun thing. Um, you guys are doing unit testing and stuff like that.
Not yet, but we will
You'll
be,
get to
yeah.
that. Just a personal tip from that: really listen to unit testing because that's a lot of people don't write tests, especially for example code. If you write a test for an example code, I will love you to death because unit testing is so important, but it's rarely taught and it's people rarely do it.
So unit testing, guys, is imagine pre-code camp, right, where you write your code and then it has the things over on the side and you're trying to get the green check marks.
Hmm.
Those are unit tests that are running against the code that you were writing. So as a professional developer, it's highly encouraged that when you one concept is called test-driven development or TDD. And before you write a single line of your code to make it work, you write out all your tests of what it should do. And you go, all right, if I put this in, this is what should come out. And if I put an empty thing in, this is what
think it's like
it will fit
17.
in one of my teaching weeks of how do you write those tests to make sure that your code is working as it should be.
Yeah, I think it was like module 17 when I looked at it or something like that. So you guys will get there.
Maybe week
Or
17.
week 17 or something like that.
I'll check.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, and that's to me, that's the difference between like somebody who can write code and someone who's a professional is that can they write tests for their code and guarantee their code's going to work every time, no matter what I throw at it. Because all that stuff can be automated so that the next, I mean, if you're sitting here looking at a million lines of code and you change three things, how do you know you didn't break something? So that's where the unit tests come in because then you run them, and if all those unit tests passed before and they all pass afterwards, you feel better about them not breaking. I mean, it's not 100%, but it helps you write code and it helps you be more professional about your code.
And it's not even how do I know the 3 lines I changed didn't break my code? It's how do
Yeah.
I know the 3 lines I wrote didn't break someone else's code that's relying on my code or that I'm relying on their code?
Yep.
So, my question has to do with, I mean, remote working
Mhm.
sounds cool in some ways, but also kind of isolated.
Mhm.
And when you work with a team, like on site, what's the difference? Like, how do you work together? Like, are you still kind of siloed and texting on Slack, or are you more like working together in a room, like where you can talk to each other a little bit, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It depends. Every team is different. Every company is different. I mean, I worked on a team where we all sat in the same row in the same cubicle, and we still only talked over Slack. Because I mean, who wants to get up and talk to somebody? It's like all the way over there, or it's faster just to send a quick message over stuff. And then eventually we're like, wait a minute, if we do this in the office, why don't we just do it from home? So we started doing it from home, and it's like, oh yeah, it's actually way better because I don't have to drive into the office. I don't have to put on pants. I don't have to do these things that slow me down every day. Um, so the technology has helped the remote coding, but you do still feel a little isolated because like where I work, they have office parties and stuff like that, and it's like, cool, you guys have fun. I'm not there, but that's the trade-off for that. But I still feel like I mean I'm pretty close with everybody at work. I have a fairly decent I have conversations with them. I know a lot about them, so I can still have work friends or whatever you want to call it and stuff like that over Slack, over chat, because we have video cameras. We'll video conference. We'll pair program with each other. We'll just post random GIFs because that's what Slack devolves into if you've ever been on one long enough. Giphy will kill you. Um, it's but it
Very
is
accurate.
it's takes effort to work from home. People say it's oh that sounds great, it's perfect, but there's a lot of effort to do it. Something that I had to learn. Yep.
So I just wanted to mention that while you were talking, I took the liberty of visiting two job sites and one scholarship
Mhm.
website. And when they ask for your education, like these sites don't even include boot camp in their drop down. So
Right.
it's even more. I guess that makes it even more important that our resume is going to be able to pass the algorithm test
Yep.
because I'm kind of feeling like, okay, so that's strike one right there.
Right.
That I'm not able to list that.
Yeah, you'd feel that way, but in reality, it's probably not.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's the best part, right? Like,
Okay.
and I mean, some places have old things where you have to fill out your education, and they won't let you submit the form, and just write anything in there, right? Did not go or School of Hard Knocks or whatever you float your boat, right? I mean, because people will look out on the other side too, right? So I mean, especially a thing, and this probably will be covering the other one. Don't put a salary.
Yeah.
Don't put a salary.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of how I can be creative and maybe like just slide boot camp in under one of the other categories since
Oh,
it's
totally.
accepted in the drop down.
Yeah, slide that stuff in there because I mean somebody will if you get through there. If you don't, then I mean, oh well, it's gonna happen. That's their loss, right? But if you do get that, somebody's gonna look at it and be like, hey, they went to a boot camp. That's cool. Hey, they learned this, and they might call you and talk to you about it. And if you can get a call and you can get somebody to talk about it,
Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't matter anymore. Yep.
One thing, it's not really a question, but one thing that I found that I've, after looking for a job and after applying, I'll generally find somebody who's either the head of that department or, and I'll email them directly and send in my resume. And I've gotten more callbacks that way than doing regular application.
Yep.
So if you do a little, Google stalking of people.
Well, LinkedIn helps from that one too, right? Go follow the company and then figure out, but don't be too I have had people where they will literally friend everybody in the company and send everybody in the company a, hey, I'm interested in this job.
Oh.
Ugh.
That's
Like, I mean,
toxic stuff.
yeah, I'm like, oh man, they really want this job. But on the other hand, what else do they want? Like, I don't know if I want to play this game. I don't want to do this. So don't be too creepy about it. But yeah, be a little forward with that. Like, if you can't, if their system won't let you submit it because they require a college education or whatever else, then skip it and send it directly to someone. Try to figure out who the hiring person is and say, hey, I don't have a college education, but I did go to boot camp. I do know this. Here's my GitHub. I wrote code that you might be interested in. And what are they going to do? Say no? Oh, well, that's fine. What if they say yes? That's awesome. So,
I have far too much college education that's not relevant to
mhm.
this. So, what do I do with that? Because I had applied for jobs in the past, and my master's degree was considered overqualified, even though it had absolutely nothing to do with what I was applying for.
I probably wouldn't want to work for a company that does that anyway. I mean, that's my personal opinion of that.
People's own biases.
Yeah, like,
I've had interviews. They said you're gonna leave. Like that's too bad. You're gonna
Right.
leave.
That's so. But okay, fine.
yeah.
I'm just curious. Like, I'm still gonna put it there because I feel like education is still valuable,
Oh, no.
regardless of what it was in. It's still valuable. But
I mean, it's absolutely valuable, and you should put it there because even if it's something cool to talk about, right?
yeah.
Like I've worked with people that have had degrees in meteorology and random other stuff, and you're like, yeah, cool. How was that like? Well, that was cool. What did you do?
Yeah.
That might give you something to talk about, and it also shows that you've gone through higher education and you've had a career or you had a thought to do something, and then you were like, you know what, this isn't for me. I want to do something else.
Yeah.
I totally respect that too, because I mean, how many people have been like, I want to be a astronaut and whatever else, and then you're like, nope, turns out I'm afraid of heights, so I'm gonna go do this instead. That's a cool story. I don't care. It's fine.
Is it worth listing like soft skills versus like hard skills on a resume?
Depends on what you're applying for. If you're applying for a project manager position, soft skills are good. Um, Project managers hold a special part in my heart because there's really good ones, and really good project managers are worth their weight in gold, and you love them. And really bad project managers, you don't want people to die, but you get close. You ever been to that part where you're like, oh, like I really wish you didn't work here because you're making my job twice as hard as it would be.
Manage yourself out. Yeah.
And like I mean, with that, soft skills are more important because project managers don't need to know how to code. They might need to know like arbitrary, like, hey, I've heard of code, and they might need to know, um, you know, how developers work on a day-to-day basis. But a good project manager is their basic job is to keep the project going and to keep their developers and the people that they're working with able to do their job. And some project managers kind of think the opposite, where like you have to go through me to do your job, and then you hate those people.
I find the best way to get soft skills on a resume or talk about experiences where you have used those soft skills. And then when you're interviewing, I've had plenty of interviews where they just picked up the resume and said, "Tell me about first bullet. Tell me about second bullet." Right? And some people go through resumes that way. There are a couple things I say don't put on resumes. Don't put Microsoft Word on your resume.
Mm-mm.
If you don't know Word, you should not be applying for jobs, period, right?
Yeah.
I see people put Excel on their resume all the time, and as soon as I see someone do that, I say, tell me what a pivot table is.
Mm.
And if you can't tell me what a pivot table is and how to use it, putting numbers in cells does not count as knowing how to use Excel.
Yeah.
Right? You need to know, be qualified in it. Don't put email. If you can't email, oh, Google. Google what? Are you telling me you know how to Google things? Now, if you put Google Cloud Platform or products that Google uses, or those are all things. But
Oh
I
yeah.
see all the time on resume, oh, well, my college advisor said there's white space, so I filled it with, programs I use every day.
Mhm.
Now, if you tell me you know how to use Facebook ads for social marketing, that's great. Don't put Facebook. Put Facebook ads, right? Things like that.
Some job would actually list familiar with Microsoft
Yeah. The
Office
SFC
as
one I
one
was
of the
reading last
requirements.
night. It was
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't
So
have to put that on your
Right,
resume.
right.
okay.
Yeah. They can list it all they want. They just assume. I mean, if you know how to program, you probably can figure Word out. Maybe. I mean, hopefully. I guess,
Makes you
but
wonder how they got a resume in the first place that they don't know.
right.
Right.
goes back to your list of things that you want, and once you get through that list there, it's basically comes down to, I mean, honestly, for me, it's like the feel. I feel like, did I enjoy talking to this interviewer better than this other person? Because am I going to be working with this person? I want to be able to work with someone I might like. So there's a lot of soft random things that might help you decide that job.
Yeah. Like I got this nice vibe from them.
Yeah,
Like, okay.
exactly. Or if sometimes it's perks. Like it seems like tech companies now are like trying to compete with perks. Like we got foosball tables and free water and
Or they gotta
coffee and
fly with a dragon tail.
yeah, I mean, like yeah. And I mean, if that impresses you, great.
Paid
Yeah,
time off, and
It,
I was like, who goes to work?
be careful with. I've got a story for unlimited. I have unlimited time off. It's a trap.
What is?
Unlimited time off because I like if I didn't have to use it, I ended up not using it. It's weird. It sounds weird when you say it, but I'm like I was so into my job and I was so like, and I like some jobs like they give you 3 weeks, you earn 3 weeks. If you don't take 3 weeks, they take it away. So you're like, oh yeah, crap, I got to take 3 weeks off. But if you have unlimited vacation, you stop caring about taking time off. And then my wife yelled at me. She's like, you don't take time off. And she's like, when you do, it's to go travel or something else, and I don't go with you. I'm like, yeah, but I'm home all the time, sweetie. Don't you? She's like, no, you take time off. I got stuff to do. I'm like, okay. So
My
actually, I just
company just made the switch from unlimited to a fixed amount of time.
yeah.
And there are some legal ramifications around it as well.
Hmm.
Companies actually offer unlimited time off because if they do that, when you leave the company, they don't have to pay
Pay you
you
that
Yes.
for the paid
vacation
time
Yep.
time,
off that you
right?
have
It's not
accrued.
accrued.
Right.
But the very reason we made that switch was because no one in the company was taking time off.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, we're doing 3 weeks, and
Companies
you can.
lose money actually when you don't take time off
Yeah, I
too.
think
Yes.
so.
Right.
They
So
get
like
rescheduled.
I just read an article about that actually recently.
Yeah, because if they have to pay you at the end of the year,
That
anytime you don't
companies are
take
like
off.
suffering because
Yep.
people who actually like their jobs are not taking time off,
Yeah.
or like people are afraid to take time off nowadays.
Right.
Hmm.
So like
Right.
it's weird. It's a weird backwards. It's not. It's counterintuitive.
It is like I feel like the intention was good. Like
Hmm.
I mean, the swim lane. I love these guys. They're great. And he's like, yeah, we're super family focused. We give you all the time off, all the sick time you need. I'm like, sweet, that sounds great. And I ended up not taking it. I'm like, I'm working sick for some reason because I liked my job. I still like my job. But I wanted to get stuff done. I felt like I had to get stuff done, especially with a small company. There aren't a lot of people to pick up the slack if you're not working, so things aren't getting done when you're not working. And you just get into that cycle of you never recognize like, hey, I haven't taken time off in 2 years. So it's unlimited time is great. The other downside of unlimited time off is because you're not owed it, they can reject it. So you'd be like, hey, I want to take a week off. And they're like, well, that doesn't work for us. Like if you're owed that, they have to give you that week off, right? They might not have to give you that week off, but eventually they got to give you time off. But a company with unlimited time doesn't necessarily
Sorry,
have to
not
give
this
it to you.
week.
Yeah, like, oh, we got a deadline to hit this week. And you're like, oh, what about next week? Well, and then you get into that thing too. So it sounds good. It can be good, but yep.
Do you have any advice on how to evaluate a company's culture? Because in my experience, and it definitely wasn't in tech, but um, you know, the picture painted by the interviewer
They seem cool.
is very different
Hmm.
from what you experience when you're actually there.
Hmm.
So,
I'll even add on to that one. A lot of times when I've interviewed places, they will paint pictures of we use the latest tech and we use the newest code. Yeah, he knows what I'm. We use the latest tech. We use the newest code, and you show up and they're like, "Cool, we do that." Like 3 people in the company do that. We're gonna put you on this legacy tool that you have no idea what it is, and it's terrible. And you just they pull the bait and switch on you, and so you gotta be careful of that too. So that's where I mean, asking about the culture, just flat out ask, like, what do you guys do? Do people talk on their coffee breaks? How many people use JavaScript? Ask those questions if that matters, because you know if they flat out lie to you, then you can just leave. You're like, thanks for wasting my time. But most of the time, they won't lie to you because it's not in their benefit either, because they don't want to waste the time hiring you. Ask all those questions. Just flat out ask them. Be like, all right, this project, how many people are working on it? Will I be on this project? Because if you don't ask, they could kind of slip it by you a little bit.
I, I, in every single interview that I do, I say, what's the project management structure?
Mm.
Because if they go, oh, you'll have a supervisor who's taking care of you. Okay, but we have 300 tasks to get done for this project and 3 people to do them. Who is making sure that those tasks are getting done? What are the due dates like? what project management method are you using? Are you using waterfall? Are you using agile and scrum? Do you do daily stand-up meetings? These are all things that I am hoping to cover at random times of, hey, this is how my company does project management. And here's how we make sure that this thing that literally has 1,000 things that have to get done and only a couple people to do it, make sure we all get it done and we're not stepping on each other's toes. And that's a major thing in software development, right? Um, and so that's a question that I ask with company cultures. Do you have a dedicated project manager for this team? And how does that management, flow? What's that look like?
You'll gain that with experience too, because you'll learn through some of those questions and stuff like that. You'll learn things like, like, all right, we use agile. Cool. All right, you do a daily stand up. Yeah, we do a daily stand up. I'm like, all right, who's the product owner? Your manager. Hmm. Who's the scrum master? The project manager. So you learn once you get accustomed to certain things, you start to find little triggers where you're like, that doesn't sound right. That's weird that you guys say that. A lot of that will come with experience. I don't know if there's any like bulletproof list of things you should ask. But I mean, if I know most companies are doing it nowadays, but I kind of actually don't like it when companies like post. When you look at the About Us page, it's all of their employees shooting pool or out on the beach waving, and you're like, what are they trying to sell here? Because it turns out they might actually try to be selling you something. So I mean, find the culture that you like. I always ask like, what's your day to day job like? Like I'll ask the interview, I'm like, what is your day like? What do you do during the day? Like literally list it out. Like what's going on? If it turns out they're in like 6 meetings and they're a software developer, they're like, why is a software developer in 6 meetings every day? Like what's going on there? Are they being PM'd to death at that point? What's happening? So you can figure stuff out, and you'll get a lot of that with experience sometimes. I mean, eventually you'll get there to that point.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask because one of the things that annoy me is like at my job is having to doing tasks that are completely unrelated.
Hmm.
So I was just wondering, like in your job, what you're a software developer, you're a software developer, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
Sometimes.
but how does your day like? I mean, how do you guys like what what kind of task like do you guys have? Like what kind of I don't know how to phrase it properly.
So, are you guys gonna do agile stuff like that here?
I don't know that's in the curriculum, but
Okay.
I'm gonna try and squeeze as much of this random stuff in as possible. I
Okay.
actually just pinged Jesse and I'm like, hey, can we do a day on like setting up a website and getting LinkedIn ready and
Yeah,
putting it all together and
that'd be totally cool.
so
So I generally, and I will start out with, I really liked Jira when it first came out. Now I hate Jira because now it's terrible.
what's Jira?
What's that?
What's Jira?
We have the cloud one now.
For the students, what is
Oh,
Jira?
what is Jira? So Jira originally started out as a way to kind of be like an online Scrum board, I guess you would say.
What's Scrum?
Oh, jeepers! Look what I stepped into
Jira
now.
is a project management
Yes.
tool where you can load in all the tasks that have to get done and then you can collaborate on it, kind of like Google Docs, but
Okay.
Yeah.
specifically for getting projects done.
But it doesn't start out as a project management tool. It
No.
turned into a project management tool, and that's why I don't like it
It
anymore.
wasn't designed to be.
No, it wasn't. It just,
Okay, so
yeah, Scrum and Agile in general has devolved into the thing it was trying to solve, it turned into. Um, but
Efficiency.
not to go, yeah, it was started out to be efficiency, and then it turned into most of my job is moving cards around in Jira now. So it's my day-to-day work is we have a list of tasks in Jira. So just consider it like I really like Scrum when you're doing post-it notes on a window. That's my favorite. So picture a bunch of post-it notes on a window that say, do this, make this button blue, add this button here, stuff like that. I will come into the office, I'll be like, I'm going to make this button blue today, put it in progress, go back to my desk, make the button blue, send it to QA or go through your whole process of development and whatnot, and then come back, take this, say, I made button blue, ta-da, next, and do it that way. Depending on where you work, small companies will you might wear many hats. You might be, hey, you're the computer guy. Can you fix my printer? It happens. It happens sometimes. Say no.
cool.
Um, Yeah, just say no, it's fine. Just be like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, but I mean, there will be meetings, there will be planning sessions, there will be, I mean, might get involved in meetings throughout the day, but you have to try and fight to keep some of them away because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm writing code, I tend to get into a zone, and I really kind of I need to be in that zone. And if somebody comes and asks you a question, it's like 3 hours of work is lost, and you have to kind of
Straight
put
up.
it back in your head, and you're all messed up. Working from home is good and bad for that sometimes because it's great working from home until your kid's like, "Hey, Daddy, you want to play?" And you're like, "Yeah, I do." So, um, but it's usually tasks are similar. Hopefully, you're working on the same project because I agree with you. Like switching from unrelated things means you have to get all that in your head, especially in this job where you got to like remember what this project was supposed to do and remember where you left off, and like you're losing time at that point. So ideally, there's a you're able to focus on one thing for the time it needs to, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
I mean, it's fine if you're actually doing another task which is related to the one that you were doing
Hmm.
previously, but like, I mean, going from uh, like doing a complete 180, it's like that's just like it's a little distracting. Then you have to come back and finish these
Yeah,
uh, tasks that you know you just have to kind of like
it is. It
have.
messes with your head.
Yeah, it does.
It does. For me, it definitely does. So you have to fight back a little bit sometimes on that. But I mean, there's only so much you can do. Company's a company, and it's going to continue to be a company.
I
So.
find the best way I deal with that is like a lot of tech companies have one-on-ones, right, with your manager, and other fields do as well. But I have found that there are times that the manager doesn't even know that they're putting you on
Mhm.
tasks that you don't want to be doing. So one-on-ones tend to be weekly or monthly, and they are literally you carve out a time with your manager and you go, hey, we're going to talk for 30 minutes. And if we have nothing to talk about, we're going to just sit there for 30 minutes until someone says something.
Right.
And that's the time that you say, hey, I feel a little awkward about bringing this up, but the one-on-ones where we do it, I feel like I'm working on things I wasn't hired to do. And the manager may come back and go, oh, I didn't realize that. And especially if you propose a solution and say, hey, maybe this person's better suited for doing that, and I can take some of their work, which I'm better suited to do. Now, all of a sudden, you not only said, hey, I have a problem, but you also came up with a solution. And you're totally right. There are some times that the company structure is just not right, or they don't have the money to hire another person, or whatever it may be. But communicating when you run into an issue with work, and you can bring that up in an interview and say, I'm not afraid to communicate and to provide some feedback. And I hope that my coworkers will also provide me feedback. That's a major thing that I look for in interviews.
And I mean, especially if you have a good manager, a lot of times what I found was the worst offenders were people who would come to and I like talking to you, but don't come walking down and tap on my shoulder in the middle of something. Go plan this out. Go schedule, because like you said, your manager might not even know. And I've had good managers where I'm like, hey, manager, this PM has been bugging me for like 3 weeks, and he's like, what? Tell that PM to come directly to me and do not pass go. I will stand in the way of that to get that to stop. So a lot of times it's unintentional. Some people just
Project manager.
Oh,
yeah,
you
project
talk
manager.
one project manager about another?
Uh,
Wait.
have you ever been to big companies? There's rooms full of project managers. Ugh. But yeah, it's sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes they're like, hey, it's. I mean, quite honestly, it's easier for them to go directly to you than to try and go through up and down the silos and all this other stuff. So they're trying to improve their job, but I mean, there's give and take to that as well.
So I'm used to jobs where that sort of discussion would be seen as like me being insubordinate and lazy
Yeah.
Hmm.
and like
Probably
not
don't
do
want to work there.
Mm.
literally not doing my job. So like,
Uh,
well, I guess I don't want to work in those places.
Are tech
no, it's
jobs are tech jobs that plentiful that you can have
there's
that attitude? Because I'm with Jeff Quaid.
Yeah,
My
like
experience has
I have
never
a
been
lot of fear
like
with
not
my
never,
like
but
direct,
often has not been.
supervisor
I
being like, you are not doing your job, when maybe I have like maybe I need help or maybe I need more training or whatever.
I think if you're proactive about it
Mhm.
and you kind of test the waters, right, you're not just going to dump it on them and be like, here's this list of 15 things that's 10 up, and if you don't fix these, I'm going to quit. But
Yeah.
as you notice them happening, you communicate on them. And there are
and it,
So my employer will start to see me as someone they like, I don't know, need to have
If
around
you
rather
don't
than
find
someone
valued
who
in a
is
job,
expendable.
if you're
yeah.
not valued in a job, then you have a bad employer.
I'm with you, right? Like I feel the same way sometimes. We're like, hey, I'm not, I don't know this. I'm bad at my job. But I mean, especially with programming, nobody knows it. Like every bit of code you've written is something nobody has ever written before.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows how to do your job. That's okay. So if you're stuck on something, get help from somebody. Get help from a coworker. Get help. That we do that all the time. I mean, there's a whole concept called pair programming where it's literally two people working on the same computer doing the same thing. And especially for like you guys starting out, I would always like new hires and things like that. I would always pair programming with them. That's the best way to teach. If you've never pair programmed, it's basically two people sitting at a computer. I mean, it sounds exactly like what it is on one computer with one keyboard writing something together. Sometimes it sounds weird, but it's a great tool because, especially the way I do it, the person sitting at the keyboard is not the person writing the code. So the person talking is the person writing the code. So I'm telling you what to write, and then you're saying, hey, what if we do it this way? And I'm like, yeah, well, it'll be a conversation, and then we'll switch. And then now you tell me what I should write and keep going that way. That's a great way to learn. So some companies will totally be okay with pair programming. It sounds inefficient because like if you come from a big company, why am I paying two developers to do one thing, right? But that's how this works. I mean, it's a tough thing to get used to, especially if you've been doing something else for a long time. But you're just as much an artist as you are a tech, an engineer, because you're writing code nobody's ever done before, and you're solving problems no one's had to solve or done in a way that nobody expected. You're coming up with all this stuff. So, and that's why sometimes the job, so people that aren't or managers and or whatever that aren't used to managing developers don't understand that. I had a manager who was like, "Why aren't you typing? You're not working." That's not how that works. You got to sit there and think about it for a little bit.
Right.
And I mean, you'll find companies where they appreciate that and they understand that.
Yeah.
And
Like I'm
I mean,
staring out a window and people are like,
yeah,
"You're not doing your job," and I'm like, "Yo, I'm trying to think right here."
I mean, I full out and I've told my company, I love swim lane because they kind of get it. But like, I'll be in the middle of the day and I'll be stuck on something. I'll go mow the lawn
Yeah.
because I'll get, and I've gotten halfway through the lawn and I'm like, oh crap, I figured it out. Turn it off, leave my mower in the middle of the yard, come running back inside. I'll snow blow the driveway because it's Syracuse. But it's yeah, I mean, some people don't understand that it's a creative job. I mean, I've spent whole days where I haven't written a single line of code because I just thought about it. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, or I wanted to plan a couple of steps ahead. But like traditional managers would be like, hey, you didn't write a single thing today? That means you didn't work. That's not true. That's not how that works. And that's a mindset change for everybody, right? Because I mean, you're working at a job. Every job you started with, like I started at McDonald's, right? If I stopped to think about a hamburger, they're like, you're not doing the job, and they were right because I wasn't making a hamburger. So,
So what problems or what issues are you trying to resolve when you code during the day?
um, it's different, which is why I like the job a lot. But you're either trying to add a feature or trying to fix a bug. I mean, if I'm trying to add a feature, like the last feature I worked with a guy with that we're still working on was trying to add the ability to throttle messages. So you're sending messages over RabbitMQ and they're just going, 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 and we wanted the ability to hold some of those messages back. So we sat down and we talked about it for a little while. First, we're like, all right, can we add a plugin to the system that will hold onto the messages after we sent them? And we had to write in Erlang, and we didn't know and didn't want to learn Erlang. And then we researched it for a day or two. We figured out that even though it's a distributed system, the data would have been held in a single node, and if we had lost that node, we would have lost the data, and we would have lost all that stuff. So we're like, nope, not going to do that. And in fact, the task we had was write plugin for Rabbit, and we're like, nope, not going to do that. That's not going to work. 2 days of deciding that, we were like, nope, let's try something different. So we tried something different. We worked on that for a little while. We tried to solve the different problems that we had with that. And that was about a week's worth of work.
Because I think one of the problems that I have sitting on this side of the aisle as a student with so much to learn is I constantly think about why would someone hire me if there's so much technology available? And it's kind of like, okay, I sit sometimes and I think, well, what kind of problems are companies still having where they would still need so many
Mm-hmm.
programmers
all the problems because quite honestly, every company would love to replace every employee with something you wrote. Automation's definitely huge right now. So they're gonna hire you and they're gonna have you write something that I mean that's one of the reasons I got into programming was I like to write things that make other people's jobs easier. That is something I like to do. I just like doing that kind of thing. And that's what they're gonna hire you to do. They're gonna hire you to write an application to make HR's daily reports faster. Or they're gonna have you update something to, make their engineers jobs faster, or you're going to work with sales. And that's another cool part about a lot of software engineering. You can work with a whole bunch of different places inside of a company. That you could be like, all right, you're going to work with sales today and do something for them. Tomorrow you might do something else. I mean, it's pretty much anything you can come up with. And some companies just see you as a gold mine because they're like, cool, I've got this random problem. We're gonna put it in the closet with the nerds and see what they spit out. And, but that's our job, and that's cool, and that's fun. Yes, I mean, what did I put? I solve problems by telling computers what to do. That's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to solve a problem by telling a computer what to do with your code. And you're going to solve a problem faster than anybody manually can do it. Like a lot of the code that we're working for, swim lane, their whole area of expertise is automatically responding to security events so that the companies who have rooms full of socks. If you've ever been in a security operations center for a company, it's like the size of this room, TVs all over the thing, full of people, and it's all dark because you don't want to scare them. And they're all the day they're just responding to alerts manually. And yeah, rapid response. They're all so I'm writing code and Swimlane has software so that they can say, hey, if you see this event, you can solve it automatically doing this, this, and this, and let me know if that doesn't work. So now the person sitting at the computer isn't responding to 200 events, maybe they're only responding to two. Yes. So, and that's what Swimlane's looking to solve. They're looking to automate, security operations for companies, and they're very good at it. I mean, I'm not boasting, but.
I remember before I used to work at Rapid Response, and
Mhm.
one of the problems that they were having was when the technology was established. So you've seen the commercial where the woman says, "I've fallen and I can't get up,"
Mhm.
right? And that has to happen with the person still being in range of whatever signal
Yep.
is coming from the house. But they developed something that is actually like connected to the satellites now.
Mhm.
So and it knows when you fall or other stuff like that. And so instead of being restricted to home, if you're somewhere out in the community or if you get lost, we could actually from the center ping where you were,
Yep.
but sometimes it didn't work. So there were problems between, whatever was going on at our station and the GPS. So
Mhm.
I say that to say, yeah, that's something. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So something that you would have to fix, or we
Yep.
would have to fix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they bring in if I mean signals suck. I mean, it's the Earth, right? So signals will
Right.
bounce off and get lost, and whatever else. So they might have you update that software to remember the last place they were or the last 10 places they were, instead of relying on real-time data. Or they might be able to guess based on the direction of travel and how long ago it was. They might be able to figure out where you are.
Okay. Or whether or not they just need like another tower because the signal sucks in that area.
Yeah, exactly. They could just do, you could write testing software where you have nothing to do with the actual software. It's just like a computer or a stick or something else that you're running around the Syracuse with trying to figure out dead spots. And instead of you looking at a light to see when the light goes off, you can write an application that constantly pings that stick and then builds a like 3D graph of where it is. That's all software that you would write to just help solve a problem. And it's fun. It's the best part is when you write it and you didn't like every project I've started, I've always thought I can't do this. But then you sit there and you figure it out and you learn something new and at the end you're like, ta-da! And then I mean half the time they're like, cool, thanks, on to the next thing. But for me it's like, yay, look at this thing I wrote, isn't that cool? Isn't this graph cool? And they're like, yeah, that's awesome. Can I export it to Excel? And I'm like, dang it. Next.
For my first internship, they gave me a project and didn't give me any deadlines, no scope, no anything. And so the first week I was there and just really felt like I can't believe they hired me. Like
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know. And So I went in trying to get this project up and running, and it just wasn't working and wasn't working. And I felt really bad going to the senior developers on the team and going, "How's this supposed to work?" And I finally got it working. And I went to my manager and I said, "Hey, I think I'm done." And he goes, "What do you mean, like done on a part of it?" And I went, "No, you gave me this task and it's up and running." And he went, "You did that in 3 weeks. That was supposed to take you the whole summer."
Yep.
Well, you could have told me that because I was beating myself up the first 2 weeks
Yeah.
thinking I was a complete idiot, and then
Right.
the light bulb went off. And
Yep.
then he went, "Oh, we'll fix that." And so I spent the next 2 weeks writing out documentation for the team and thinking about the next intern that was coming in or the next, team member. And then he went, "I don't know what to do with you." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm still getting paid." And so I went down and we were on the second floor and we had ID cards that no one on the first floor could use because the tech people are the tech people. You don't get to bother them.
Mhm.
Right? And so I'd go down and I knew what team I was writing the software for, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I just sit in your cubicle?" They were like, "No, sure, go for it. Like, what do we care, right?" And so I saw them using the software that I had just added the feature to, and I went, "No, that's a horrible way of doing that. Like, are you kidding me? You go here and here and here and here." And they went, "Yeah, I do that all the time." And I said,
Oh
"How
my
long does it take you to
gosh.
do that?" And they said, "Oh, I do that 2 hours a day." So I went back upstairs and I already had the code and I went, "Oh no, here's a new feature that automates all of that." And I said, "Hey," flagged out my manager and I said, "Hey, can I roll out this feature?" And he looked at me like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Like, I don't know how that's going to help." He got 25 emails that day from the team using the software. "Thank you so much for getting that feature in. We've been requesting this for 2 years." There was just such a backlog on the team that that's what really, got it going. And he came over and he was like, "How did you know about that?" And I went and I talked to the customers. And obviously, you don't always have that opportunity, but that's what you guys are learning, right? You're learning all these puzzle pieces, but by the end of this, you're going to look and go, "Oh, these puzzle pieces all fit together, and I can make an impact, and I can make software easier to use, or I can write a little plugin for Google Docs that does that thing that I do at work every day, and I can make that easier." And that's kind of the magic of software engineering.
I work for a nonprofit, and I had to go around from one department to another, and so I was talking to this one manager, and she was saying how the person that she worked with was supposed to give her a certain piece of information when they received it from another agency. Well, this one particular participant decided that he didn't want to give the manager the information because it would require him to move from out of his apartment into another apartment. She didn't find out until 10 years later. And the reason why she didn't find out is because there is a disconnect between her and another social services agency. And I was like, well, wow, how do you know that no one else is lying to you? And right now it's basically on an honor system. I asked her, I said, well, I said, I'm in a programming and coding class, and I said, did you ever think that maybe there was a way that that could be automated, that when they press a button on their end, that at some point during the day that it would update your record? She hadn't really thought about it, but I did. And so now I'm looking at other stuff, like when we get our intakes, and I'm looking at it, and it's obviously that someone typed this information into a system. I'm having to take that same documentation, and now I have to type it into another system. And I'm sitting at my desk like, why? If somebody, oh, I want to shake somebody, if you already took the time to type this, why can't I just press a button for it to populate things on my end?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm thinking of how I can resolve that, but I can't right now.
That was a lot of what I did at Time Warner Cable was just moving data from one system to another because, like you said, you don't want to do that manually.
Right.
So it's just writing code over and over again that would be like, all right, pull it out of this database, populate these fields in this database, and do it automatically every couple of minutes, or figure out when it happened and do it then.
That's what I'm trying to do right now because I had to enter information like donation information for the nonprofit that I work for, and it's
Mhm.
just after like a while you just start to make mistakes that
Yeah.
if you had a machine do it, you probably wouldn't make. So I've got to.
Yeah, I joke every once in a while that I'd rather spend 5 hours saving myself 15 minutes than to just do that thing 15 minutes over and over again, which is why I'm a software engineer instead of just practical, I guess.
And then just to think of how one person not honoring the honor system to give you that information,
Hmm.
and to find out that you've paid into a program for this person over 10 years when they, if they had been honest, another program should have been paying for their services.
Right.
I'm like, wow, how many people are getting away with that just because they don't pass the information along?
They need a board like list all the tasks like you guys
Yeah.
like that need to be completed by a certain time and then check it out.
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't anything software engineering can't solve. It's usually if it can't solve it, there's another reason. Like with government, there's usually government agencies saying you can't share information automatically and there's stuff like that. So, but
Right.
yeah, you'll be surprised. I mean, everything sounds super complicated when you explain it. Like I say, I do security automation. I write software that moves events billions per day across multiple systems. It sounds really complicated, but it's really not that complicated. It just sounds neat.
So at the end of the day, are you using loops and variables and functions and what else have we been covering?
APIs,
APIs
Yep.
and
If statements.
if statements
Yep.
and
assemblies.
Yeah.
not much outside of that, right?
Pretty much just stacking stuff onto, it's like Jenga. You just keep piling it up and hope it doesn't fall over. But I mean, it sounds, and that's the other thing I've struggled with too. Is like every place I've gone, and I don't know if it's gatekeeping or whatever else, but programmers are like, I work on this highly scalable horizontal system, it's on VMs and Dockerized and all this other stuff, and you're like, wow, that sounds really cool, and then you show up and like, oh, that's not that bad. That sounds neat, cool, but it wasn't that. It just sounded cooler than it actually was. So,
So um, I recently had a job, got a job, and for the first like month and a half, I was like in like I worked on like a clothing store, and I worked at Burger King, so I was in that mindset. If you're not working,
mhm,
you're not valuable, but it's actually the opposite.
yeah.
And it took a while for me to actually believe that. I'm like, no, if I don't do it,
Right.
you're gonna fire me.
Right.
Mhm.
So I was like putting in more hours than I need to. Like, hey, why are you doing this extra hours? I'm like, you don't need to do that. Relax. And so it's the first time that it's like they value you, and they're like, how can we help you do this?
Mhm.
We just want you to be the best and relax and just be able to do what you got to do. And
All right.
it's like completely opposite than like other jobs, but you
Yeah.
really are that valuable.
Yeah, get excited because
Yeah.
it's. I mean, they don't care what your hands can
I'm
do.
not gonna know how to ask
It's all what's going up here.
I'm with you
Yeah, it's
completely.
gonna be great.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you get into certain companies, they're going to invest in you too. They're going to send you to training. They're going to bring trainers to you. They're going to send you to events. They'll do all that stuff because it makes them. I mean, especially like it sounds cool. Like, oh my goodness, they paid $200 for me to go to this event. I can't believe it. But I mean, if you think about it on the flip side, I learned something new, and then they made millions of dollars off of it. You're like, all right, yeah, fair enough, right? So it's not like they're magnanimous about it, but still, it's neat to be, like you said, to be valued and stuff like that because you are going to be an investment for them. The more that you know and the more that you can do, the better it is for them.
So how does that work? Because I feel like it feels weird because like I'm not gonna be this job for 30 years.
Right.
So it's like they're
Well, right, and
investing
they
in
know
you.
that too.
Yeah, they gotta know it. So how does that work?
I mean, there's forward-thinking managers, and I think I've seen it on LinkedIn a whole bunch of times where if you don't invest in an employee, they'll leave. If you do invest in an employee, they'll leave. And it's like it doesn't matter, right? Because if you're stagnant, you're producing it the day I hired you, and if I'm not investing in you, you're going to be like, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to learn something new, or you learn something new on your own and leave. Where if they invest in you, you might stay. But either way, you're going to be better And so you're going to be better than the day I hired you. So why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I mean it's video games? Why wouldn't I level up all my characters, right? That's silly. Why would I just sit there with a bunch of level 1? I mean, you're not Pikachu, right? Obviously, but it's I mean, that is an investment, and the companies recognize that, and they realize that hey, I got to level these guys up, and they also rely on you, which is kind of nice too, to tell them what you need. So you'd be like, hey, I mean, obviously companies aren't going to be on the hottest, latest trends and all this other stuff. So you're going to be on that. You might be interested in it, and you've learned about something like Docker or something like that. So you have the fun job of going to your manager and explaining to them what Docker is, and then explaining to them why you think that's good. And they'll be like, hey, if you think that's good, we'll send you to DockerCon, or we'll get you Docker training, and then you can start applying that to your job. Costs them a little bit of money, but if it saves you 2 or 3 hours a day, they made way more money just flat out saving your time at that point. So the fact that you're a good steward with your time is super valuable to any company, and they're going to reward you with that or for that. And with it,
I don't think I would know what to do.
it's
Definitely not like that.
it's overwhelming.
We're
Yeah.
and we are definitely, on the good side of history, because the other side of that is, depending on what processes you improve upon, and I hate to say this, but some people may end up losing jobs. I'll give you a prime example. So before I left Syracuse University, because they had come up with a system that they felt was good enough for employees to start doing their own time input.
Hmm.
It's like in one fell swoop, like 30 people had lost
Right.
their jobs over in payroll. So, sometimes it comes at a cost to the way things were.
It is, and it's a tough one sometimes, especially if you know the people.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's part of what helps me with that too is, and this is, it may sound cold, but it's not. You can think of what it sounds like, but sometimes you're going to lose your job, and if you don't learn something else, then you're going to lose. If you're like, I only know time entry and I'm not going to bother learning this other job, they're going to be like, yeah, we're going to have to let you go. But if you're like, you know what, I'm going to learn this other job in Syracuse, they'll be like, all right, cool, we'll slide you over to this job, and you won't lose your job. You'll just change jobs.
And well, the first industrial revolution did that, and
Hmm.
so word has it that right now, because of AI and AU and all that other stuff, we're actually in the fourth industrial revolution, like right now.
Absolutely. I mean, and we're really early in it because I know a lot of companies are like, hey, we do blockchain AI and all that other stuff, but every single company I looked into that does AI, is, they're like, yeah, we've got complicated algorithms. I'm like, yes, so does everyone else. Like you're not actually machine learning. You wrote something that does something and it's smart. That's not AI, right? So we're not into AI as much as you think. Like Siri and Alexa and all them, they're basic, you know, read and respond type stuff, which has been around forever, right? That's a web server at that point. So you're definitely right at the beginning of some of that stuff, and it's only going to get better. And I mean, some people are gonna lose their jobs because they're just not gonna need that skill anymore, and it's gonna suck. And I mean, I definitely, my dad, he's 63, dad, um, and he works at Crucible. He's a steel worker. He taught me a lot because he's done a lot of jobs there, so he's worked there for a long period of time. But he's not gonna take this course, and it's going to be tough if he had to continue working for the next 10 years. It'd be tough for him. And there's always the unfortunate, you know, people that fall to the wayside when things like that happen.
Yeah,
But it's ideally we all take care of each other and we can
that is
support
true.
them. I got a little preachy there. Sorry.
No,
um,
I just think that's why it's important for us to finish this course,
mhm.
just for that reason alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this course is great. It's awesome that you guys are all doing that. And quite honestly, you're gonna spearhead a whole bunch of people probably behind you too. Even if, I mean, I'm sure they're gonna do this course again, but you're also gonna talk to other people and inspire them to do stuff as well. And some people won't be able to take this course, but you'll be able to take them under their wing and either provide them with some of the materials or help them out on their own, pass it along, stuff like that. That's all an opportunity that you guys have.
Definitely, thank you.
What about like work hours? You hear some companies like
don't work for
Seems
those
like
companies.
that are,
I've worked for those companies. They suck.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
some software companies
And
that
you're always salary, so you're not getting paid for 60 hours. Don't work for this. Yeah.
how do you vet that? How do
There's
you get
so there's always going to be times when you've got a crunch. They call it crunch time and whatever else. You know, you're coming up on a deadline, or there's a bug in the software that's affecting a customer that's paying your company millions of dollars. So you're going to have to, bust hump and get something done. But a lot of times they're like, all right, cool, thank you for working 48 hours straight. Take the next week off or something like that. Or at least get recognized for that or something like that. So I mean, it was hard for me too because software development it really isn't a 9 to 5 job. You might work 9 to 5, but you also might find yourself in the middle of the night coming up with a good idea and writing it on your code, and you might also find yourself coming into work the next morning and be dead for 3 hours because you were working till 2 a.m. And it's a trade-off and stuff like that. Like it took me a long time to get accustomed to the fact that there really aren't working hours because I mean you're kind of an artist and you can't like pay an artist to work 9 to 5 because that's not how that works. It just comes to you. And when I mean I work at night half the time too because that's when I feel more creative. I also work really early in the morning because that's when I can get most of my stuff done. So I just have different times of the day, and I had to learn to recognize what those times are and force myself to utilize them.
And there are some companies or roles that are better at doing that, and there
Mhm.
are other companies that have legitimate reasons for saying, no, we need you here between 9 and 5 because you're working with these other developers
Yep.
or you need feedback from your project manager. And you will find that, especially in your beginning roles, right? It's like you want to learn from someone and you want to have that mentor that you can go to and ask those questions. But as you progress along your career, you start looking at it, exact thing you described. We had an office at Coworks, and we would go in every day and say hi and put on our headphones. And if we had a question, I'd literally type it to my boss, who was 3 feet away from me, and we would talk on Slack. And whenever we actually interrupted each other, we totally regretted it because we would go back to that conversation 2 weeks later and be like, we talked about this, but what did we say we were going to do? And in Slack, you just scroll up and it's there. However, when I got started, right, my first internship was in person, and it was so valuable going downstairs and seeing the people using my software and talking to them and all of that stuff. So it's definitely something you evolve into, and it's not like you're going to flip a switch and go into a company and they're just going to be like, yeah, work whatever hours you want and make sure you provide the feedback and you found the perfect employer and just get used to that, right? Like that's not something that happens overnight. And for every great employer who is flexible with hours and understands that coding is an art, you will also find employers who expect you to work 9 to 5 and expect you to be writing a number of lines an hour and all kinds of crazy stuff where it just doesn't work that way, but they don't know how to manage coders right. So it's not like you're going to find the perfect job and get going, but there are good employers out there, and as you progress through your career, you will find more and more and know what questions to ask in the interview and, uh, you know, grow into it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're excited now, just think about the fact that it's only going to get better.
You've been standing on your feet for a while. Are you okay?
I am absolutely okay because I sit on my butt for 8 hours or more a day.
Okay, just checking,
Time
just
for
checking.
one more question.
No.
A two-parter?
No,
No.
no, I
Okay.
don't.
If you do have any more questions, you can find me on. I have a website. It's got pictures of me and my kids on it. Hit me up in my email address. One of the things, especially as you guys get further down, if hit me up if you guys want to do like a test interview or something like that. I'll be more than willing to do that for you guys. I'll just run you through the ringer and see how you guys do. I'll, I'll be nice. I'll be nice, but if you guys want to do it, I'll do it over video conference. It'll be interesting, but it'll be. I mean, I'll give you pointers and I'll run it through. Especially if you guys have an interview coming up and you just want to run a quick demo or just get your nerves off. Hit me up. Maybe I got time. Maybe I don't. We'll see. One final thing that I like to say that's not has nothing related to nothing about this is when you do things, always credit the people that you've used. In this case, I pulled the slides from this website and included photographs from this other website. Code, people tend to like copy and paste code, say yoink, thanks. Try to at least like give credit, especially if you're using an open source project. Try to give them credit because it helps them and it also validates them that people are using their stuff. Personally, I don't think it's done enough in our environment. I've done things like I've found code on Stack Overflow. I'm like, hey, that's neat, and I'll copy and paste it because let's face it, we all do that. I'll also copy the URL and put it in a comment over the top of that code and say, hey, this is where I got it from. It doesn't necessarily give them credit, but also helps the next person that has to look at that code and say, what is Shaun thinking? Turns out Shaun was thinking whoever this person that he copied his code from was thinking. But make sure you give credit where credit's due. Big companies have gotten in trouble for not doing this. So if you get in the habit of it, you might even save your company. So that's it.
Thank you.
I didn't do anything.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We are going to do a 15-minute break, so we will be back here.